this makes me feel so seen and affirmed as a Black woman. Kill things quickly if they don't work, lean into them when they do. What can kill a business is if you don't have visibility. Well, there's no such thing as perfect. I'm still working hard and it constantly feels like I'm at the beginning. The business could work, but what you would have to do to make it work, you've got to ask yourself that question. Am I prepared to go through that? I can decide, okay, I'm going to do my training session. I need to be there for 6 o'clock. I'll finish at 8 and then I'll come back. Anytime you want to sit down and cry your eyes out, it's normal. I think it's also about being very intentional about the life that you want to live. When you make decisions with the intention of thinking of the end result, you can get there faster.
Hello and welcome to Coffee and Oysters, where we get you together with business tips that actually work and where it's worth tapping your oyster around the city. My name is Francis, your host, and also a certified Notion consultant and founder of the Notion Bar, where I get my clients together with personalized productivity systems built in Notion. For my systems loving girlies who are tired of suffering with Notion alone, don't forget that every month I host the Big Notion Energy Academy, where you have the chance to ask me, a certified Notion expert, your burning questions and unpack Notion's latest releases to save you hours of going down YouTube rabbit. Details in the show notes. I always like to have a little bit of a sit down with you and let you know what's going on with my week. Well, currently, as we're recording this, it's actually right before the new year, and it's in that weird period of what are we doing with our lives? I'm also winding down journal season, which is always in December, beginning of the year. So that's fun to see how that's gone. And yeah, lots of new learnings from this year. Like TikTok has worked really well for me with repurposing to Reels. I'm definitely going to do that next year. Before we dive into our amazing guest, it's time to shout you out. If you are signed up to the Substack, which you should be, details in the show notes, every other week you will receive a Manifest Mondays email where you can shout out your projects and dreams to be mentioned here on the show, because you never know who's listening. No new submissions, hoping to change that. We are growing on YouTube, so go sign up if you're not already. I am manifesting the first brand deal for this podcast. I'm not so fussed about chasing that heavily at the moment, as I do want the right kind of deal to come. I imagine sort of a beverage brand or like a coffee brand would be great for this podcast, as it's, coffee and oysters. I imagine a world where there are digital gift vouchers where if you're part of the Coffee and Oyster Substack community, you can redeem them, essentially one big gift card. And I've seen brands do that before. And so that is kind of what I see for us at the moment. But I'll keep you posted on how that goes. And if anyone knows anybody, then hey, send them my way. So remember to sign up to the Substack, and I hope to hear what you're working on in the next Manifest Monday segment. Before today's interview, housekeeping. The show notes is your friend. This is where you can sign up to be a guest and find all the recommendations in the Coffee and Oysters guide. And also, let me know if I'm screaming into a void. Whether you're following along on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Substack, get involved to help us grow. Rate us 5 stars, comment, like, share, all of it. Now grab a cup of coffee and your favorite beverage, and let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the podcast. So excited. This week we have Jade Buffong, who is the founder of Main Hookup, the beauty booking platform that helps women find and book appointments with Afro hairstylists in their local area while making Afro and curly hairstylists more visible. Jade also focuses on building products and businesses from the ground up and creating solutions for underserved communities. On top of that, Jade is a purpose-driven marketing specialist with a decade of experience producing record-breaking results with startups, scale-ups, and established brands such as Nike. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a busy week. Christmas week is not easy. Visiting a mix of my husband's family, my family that are in the countryside in Bath. So a lot of driving, a lot of visiting people. Also, for the first time, I dropped off Christmas gifts on Christmas Eve. So I did rounds to houses.
Oh, wow.
So that it was good fun. People always appreciated it. And I baked for everyone this year. It was like, everyone gets a banana cake or a banana loaf. everyone.
A whole loaf, not a
Yeah,
part.
yeah.
Wow,
So, I mean, I
lovely.
love baking, so it was fun to make until I had to ice them, then that got stressful, but it was nice to drop things off at people. It's been a busy week, but the week we're in now, like New Year week, should be a bit more chill for me.
Love that, love that. And you know what? I hear what you said about the icing. I made shortbread this year, and the icing was the most difficult part. Like the consistency, I just kind of gave up, and I was like, "This will do."
Layering it. So if you don't have a half decent spatula, you're going to have problems. When I did it
Yeah.
at my house, I was like, oh, stress. But I took the banana cake that I made for my nan to her house and iced it there. And she has the best spatula. Of course she does, because nans have everything in their kitchen. And I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to do. Because this is doing its job. So yeah, just a tip for anybody that likes baking, get yourself a decent spatula. You will save yourself a world of headache.
Yeah, it's a whole situation with baking. I ended up spending so much money in TK Maxx because I needed to make shortbread. And I was like, oh, well, I need cookie cutters, I need a new chopping board, I need a
Yeah.
rolling pin now. This is a whole thing. Like,
Yeah, there's a whole section of your kitchen will be dedicated to baking stuff. I've loved baking since I was younger, though. Cake, banana cake, and brownies. Those are the two things I make very well.
love that. Okay, let's actually get into what this podcast is about. This is the issue with this podcast. I will just natter away and I'm like, oh no, people actually want to hear some business advice.
Nothing wrong with that. People have discovered something new.
But tell us, you are startup owner and serial marketer. Let's go with the origin stories of Main Hookup. How did you kind of roll into that whilst you were also building up this
Well,
incredible marketing career?
it was one of those things where I have always wanted to run my own business, but I don't like doing anything half-assed. So I was just like, well, if I'm going to commit a lot of time to something like this is, 8, 10, 15 years of your life. If you plan on selling, if you don't, then it's your whole life dedicated to a business. It needs to be something that I feel really connected to and committed to. So I kind of just prayed on it and said, okay, God, if I'm going to do something, please help direct me to something that I actually care about. Until then, I'll continue doing marketing because I actually really love it. And then it was around 2018, I stopped relaxing my hair. So I had been relaxing my hair for years and years and years, have the patience to learn how to look after my natural hair. I'm an athlete, I train 4 times a week. I was like, I don't really want to sweat out my hair and then have to deal with that after training. So having it relaxed just made it really convenient because it meant I can get up, I can go, whether it be to work, training, or wherever I need to be. But I got to a point where I was like, I'm going to have to learn how to look after my natural hair at some point because I can't relax it for the rest of my life. That's not sustainable. It's also not good for you. And so I just made the decision to stop. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to stop relaxing my hair. I'm going to find somebody that I know can do braids for the meantime.
Mhm.
And I'll search for a hairstylist so that I can find somebody who can teach me how to manage my hair in the meantime. And that process was just really, really painful. And I didn't expect it to be that difficult. Oh, I live in London. I think, don't quote me on this, you might need to look up the stats, but I'm pretty sure that half of Europe's black and mixed race population live here.
Oh,
So
wow.
in theory, shouldn't be a difficult problem to solve, numbers wise anyway. It was just so painful. Couldn't find anybody online. I got to a point where I was forced, because it was so difficult to find somebody online, I ended up searching for people through word of mouth. Eventually found somebody who was a really good braider, but didn't have the knowledge to teach me how to manage my hair. So I had to do all of that side, educating
Yeah.
myself. I did that. And it's not really the experience that I want because at the end of the day, if somebody does hair for a living, they're going to know so much more. They'll be able to look at my hair and advise me based on my actual hair versus me looking things up on Google and YouTube. You can only learn so much.
Yeah.
So it was that whole experience. The second thing was around this time, a lot of my family moved to Bath. So they haven't always been there. They were in London. So a lot of them moved from London to Bath. And for years, they kept coming back to London to get their hair done. So every 4 months, they would visit. And I'm like, it's great to see you, but there's no one in Bath. um, and it
You'd
took
be
them years to find somebody who was down the road in Bristol. For those that don't know, Bristol is like half an hour away from Bath. So
yeah.
They were spending 2.5 hours coming into London by coach, spending money on their hair, 2.5 hours going back home when there was somebody that was half an hour away. And then around the same time, there were all of these black actresses coming out of Hollywood complaining about the fact the Hollywood unions didn't have enough hairstylists that understood textured hair. So we're talking the women that are making millions, like the Gabrielle Unions of the world, the Kerry Washingtons of the world, all of these women coming out saying we're going on set and we're having to bring our own hairstylist because they don't have people that understand our hair texture. So it's a combination of those three things kind of happened not quite at the same time, but at a similar time. And I was like, okay, how can I go about trying to fix this problem? And that's where the idea for Main Hookup was born. How can I connect people like me with hairstylists that actually know what they're doing and really understand our hair? So that was the beginnings of it. It was all really just me trying to solve a problem that I had. I saw that my family had, and then I saw a lot of other women across the world had as well.
Yeah, and it's a very real thing. I have been listening to the buzz surrounding actresses, and there's a great documentary by Sky that I watched about Black British actresses and their sort of barriers with finding people can do their hair on set, which is far and few between, to the point that they just do it themselves. So, in terms of building this community, what were your first steps in trying to get people like onto the platform? Do you literally just walk around and be like, "Hey, would you like to be in my directory?" Or how does it work?
It is a lot of that, especially at the beginning when it was me and one other person. We both had similar business ideas, so we came together and started building. She ended up working on something else later, but it all ended amicably. But at the time, it was just us two. So it was like speaking to hairstylists, seeing if they would be interested. But also, what we decided to do with the first version was kind of ask for forgiveness, not permission. So we built a test version or initial version of the site in Squarespace. Then we got a load of stylists that were already using booking systems and embedded their booking pages on the website. And we're
Okay.
like, okay, if we can get like 50, 60, 70 in here, how will customers care that this exists before we invest a ton of time and energy? Let's take things that already exist and see if it can work. We got a load of really positive feedback from customers who were like, oh my gosh, I haven't been able to find something like this. This helped me so much. I had a really lovely quote from a woman. She said something along the lines of, oh, this makes me feel so seen and affirmed as a Black woman. I've never been able to use a directory or a beauty booking platform before. And I,
Mm.
so we were like, great, customers care. The second thing was, okay, what do stylists care about? Because customers just want to discover stylists that they can trust in their local area. And that's been the toughest thing to figure out. What is it that stylists really need? And it's a combination of things. They need a platform that's actually built for them, because a lot of the existing beauty booking platforms just aren't really designed with them in mind. So they don't have the features. They're not even designed with them in mind, to the point that a lot of hairstylists can't even use them. So if
Yeah.
you're a mobile hairstylist, for example, you can't really use Treatwell because you have to be at a fixed location.
Ah, of
So
course.
because it's not been designed with them in mind, they can't even use them.
True.
That's basically what we started doing, is like, how do we build this in a way that it helps them to manage their business based on their needs? Um,
Mhm.
the second part is talking to a lot of people. um, and the third part is making a ton of mistakes and figuring out what doesn't work until you eventually get to the things that do start to work. And so I feel like we're in a mix of all of this. Like,
Let's lean into that actually. Like, what's something that hasn't worked where you're like, we're not going to do this anymore? And what's something you've discovered does work?
something that doesn't work for stylists is just having a platform the same as everything else. There are many different beauty booking tools or systems. It'd be easy to just replicate like features. And that's what some companies do. They just kind of rebuild something that exists, but market it at a different group of people. But and sometimes it does work, but that doesn't work here. Work. What we learned very early on is we need to really think about, where are these stylists based? What are they doing? What is their work setup like? How do we make sure that we're adding to that instead of adding stress? Because you're also thinking about people who just need to manage their business really seamlessly. They're spending 10 to 12 hours a day in people's hair. They don't then have time to figure out a piece of technology that just seems like a headache. They want to get their bookings, make their money, go about their business. So it's like, how do we build something that seems very simple and so that they don't feel like it's headache?
Yeah.
That's the big thing for us. We did a custom build a couple of years back and took like some of the differences into consideration, but leaned a bit too heavily into this feels samey in some ways. And that didn't work. That was something we learned from. And since we've redesigned and rebuilt this year, I'm like, oh, okay, this feels like this works a lot better and it's much easier and more straightforward. Sometimes you can add too much too soon as well. That's something that doesn't work. Anybody that's building a tech platform, if you add too many features, too many things too soon, you're not going to know what actually works and what makes people stick. So
Yeah.
the best advice I can give anybody is spend as much time trying to speak to your customers as possible. Don't necessarily ask them how they would fix a problem because they don't know how to fix a problem. They'll tell you, it won't always lead to you building something that they would actually use. But ask enough questions to really deeply understand their problem and then think, test it, see what works, see what doesn't, kill things quickly if they don't work.
Yeah.
And keep things and lean into them when they do.
And so what you've described there is UX research. Was that a skill that you had before, or was that something you had to teach yourself?
I think when you are at the beginning and it's like you or one other person, you just end up doing things that need to be done. You don't even think about categorizing them. It's just more, okay, how do I do this for us? And then you go off and do it. I wouldn't even say that now. I enjoy speaking to stylists and I enjoy speaking to potential customers. It's all a learning experience. It's like, oh, what are the problems that they have? How can we be a solution to that problem? How can we get to a point where we're actually really significantly changing people's experience of booking an appointment? How can we get to a point that we're helping stylists to 4x their income? Those are the kind of things that I want us to solve. No person is an island, and actually, the best thing that you can do is put yourself in a position where people can see you. Visibility is everything. I think that more often than not, that's what can kill a business, even if it's a really great idea, is if you just don't have that visibility. And that's the most difficult thing when you're at the early stages. And it's that difficult for a reason. It's that difficult because there's a lot of noise and have that visibility. And that's the most difficult thing when you're at the early stages. And it's that difficult for a reason. It's that difficult because there's a lot of noise and it's also expensive to do that. It's not cheap.
Luckily for you, your speciality or specialism, yep, that's a word now, is your background in marketing that influence how you put your best foot forward with the main hookup and the strategies that you would take essentially.
It helps, definitely, but there's always so many things to do. So it's also about balance. It's like, okay, operationally, what do I need to do? People wise, who do we need on the team? In the past year, I think we've doubled the number of advisors that we have, and I've gone from being a one person to a 4-person team.
Wow.
So that's all of those things that come with it. As much as I would love to say that because marketing is my background, it's always been the strongest aspect of the business. When you're pulled in multiple directions, sometimes you can't give it all the energy and effort that you would like to. I think it's something that we've gotten better at, but it's still something that we can be better at, especially because audiences and people are ever changing. And so part of it is making sure that you're staying up with, like I said, what your customers need, what they're looking for. The biggest thing is being, what's the word? Oh, I can't remember how people describe it. It's like not being a painkiller, but something else. Because a painkiller is like temporary
You want to be a
pain.
vitamin or a painkiller. Ideally, you want to be a painkiller. You don't want to be a
Yeah.
vitamin, basically.
So you want to be a painkiller. You want to effectively nip something in the bud. You don't want to be a vitamin, which is a nice to have. It's not essential. And if people have the money for it, they will definitely buy it and they'll invest in it. But if they the vitamin, it's the first thing to go. It's a
Yeah.
non-essential. So when times get hard, it'll be like, oh, this is a nice to have. It's not a need, so it can go.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want.
Have you found any niches where you are a painkiller? Maybe it's not even B2C, maybe it's B2B, because like you said before, the film industry struggles to find
Yeah,
texture.
I think that's definitely a way of being a painkiller is helping actresses, not even just actresses in different parts of the industry, whether it be fashion, film, photography, anywhere
Mhm.
where there's some kind of filming or some kind of photography taking place. Like people not just find a hairstylist, but manage that relationship with them. And there's space for us to do so many things. A lot of it is about not working alone, but partnering with other companies that do amazing things. One of the big things we're leaning into this year is how do we get stylists in front of some of the best hair educators? Because the more education they have, the better they are at their job, the happier customers are. I am not about to go and educate myself on all things related to hair care
Right.
because that would be a whole lot working on things that aren't for you to work on when you could either integrate, partner up, collaborate with other people.
And so you've spoken quite a bit about your team. What roles do the people who you hire fulfill for you?
So we have a head of tech. Shayo, we worked together at a startup a few years back. I came in as he was leaving. So we didn't work together for too long, but we worked together for long enough and also stayed in touch. And yeah, he's been amazing in the past like or maybe 8 to 10 months, helping us to build out the latest version of the platform. I couldn't have done that without him. Then we have Katanda, our head of education and community on the stylist side. So she is an ex celebrity hairstylist, has like 30 odd years of experience in the game of like working on product formulation, working as an educator. She's worked with the likes of L'Oreal, Pink Lusters, a ton of other, I think the main choice, a ton of other different hair brands, knows her stuff inside out, and just understands the experience stylists go through.
Mhm.
We have our head of product, Surrendum, who has been helping with like deciding, okay, what do we do next? What do we lean into next? What do people need? How do we make sure that we're fulfilling it in a way that works for us? And then to have an intern, Chanel, who is constantly helping with all of the things, including the things that I don't always have time for but need to be done. So there's us five together, and then I've got a team of about 8 advisors that specialize in different areas. Some have built in the beauty tech space, some have built in the hair and beauty space, exited some really interesting companies so they understand what it is to build and sell and get products in the hands of the right people. So really great to have them on board because they can guide us when we have no idea what we're doing. I believe in leaning on those that have been there and done it before.
Yeah, I feel like having an advisor or a group of advisors is quite a niche thing. Are they on your payroll? How do you even go about finding advisors for
A
anyone who's
lot,
curious about that?
a lot of the time, you speak to people, you gauge if they would be a good fit. And in the same way that you would offer somebody an actual job, it's like they become a member of an advisory board. A lot of people will do it for nothing. Some people will do it for a little bit of equity. But if you do that, then you just have to do things like having a vesting schedule and having like very clearly outlined exactly how many hours you get from them, when, etc. So you've got things in place, then you're all good. I think also, it sounds like a really fancy thing, but it's not. My first two advisors I met at an event. It was an event in Brixton on black hair, and one of them was the host, and I was just like, "You know so much." And I need to stay in touch with you. We stayed in touch, and eventually I got to know her well enough, advisor. For some people, it's happened through introduction. Other people would be like, "Oh, you really need to meet so and so. They would love your product." The advisors that I've gotten on board have been through introduction. And again, they're either interested in the space already because they've worked in it or they've built in it and they really believe in what you're doing. And then from the moment you ask, if they say yes, it's a case of, okay, well, how much of your time can I have? I speak to some of my advisors every 2 weeks. Some of them only have time once a month or once every 2 months. We have like one big meeting where it's all of our advisors
Oh,
together.
wow.
every 2 months. And it's just like, here's all the things that have happened, help, advice, everything else in between. And that's like a big hour and a half meeting. Whereas if I'm speaking to them one on one, it might be half an hour, 45 minutes. So it really varies. And I think a lot of people also mistake like having these things in place for a company being in like a perfect place. Well, there's no such thing as perfect. I'm still working hard and it constantly feels like I'm at the beginning. I can't say that this is true of all founders, but for me, it feels like constantly pushing to get to the next stage that I want the business to be at. Having a team, having advisors doesn't change the fact that you're still trying to do what everybody else is trying to do. It just means that you've got a support system around you, which is really important.
Thank you for explaining that. I feel like that's something that's a bit mystical in startup land, like advisors, and it's like, well, what is that? Are you still doing marketing work on the
Yeah.
side or full time, or what is the balance there between
Yeah,
your
I
startup
still
self and
I still have
marketing?
clients, so I still main hookup is like just starting to go into a stage where we're starting to make revenue, like very early stage. So
Mhm.
I consult a couple of clients on the side. I've literally just started to jump into public speaking,
Nice.
and I do mentoring. So it's a mix of different things. I might mentor somebody and speak to them once every 2 weeks. I might do a marketing project for a company that really needs some support for a few months. Public speaking is a bit of a mixed bag because often people do a lot of work for free until they start getting paid. But I've been very fortunate to get quite a few paid gigs this year. But about 2, 3 weeks ago, I did a TED Ideas talk in Brighton. That
Oh,
was
wow.
that was my first speech, and that was with a TED audience. So it's like what I've done is I put myself in a position trying to reclaim more of my time by doing things that allow me to make money but really enjoy what I'm doing and don't
Yeah.
take up too much of my time so that I can invest more time in the business. At the beginning, it was very much like it might have been 2 whole days of client work, 3, 4 days of main hookup. Still, sometimes they're not. It's not. It really depends. And
Mhm.
I think it's important for people to know that that's normal, unless you're in a position where I don't know, you've inherited or you worked like a big, big job and you were able to save a lot of money, or you're very like in a very a good position to be able to go and like live at home with parents, that kind of thing. If
Mhm.
you have one, the other, all of the above, then you're in a great position to not have to do consulting or other work on the side. If you're not in
Mhm.
that position, then you get have to do something until the business starts making enough money for you to pay yourself. And that's normal and totally fine. One thing that I will say is something that a lot of people don't talk about until they're in a position probably where they feel more comfortable. It's really normal to feel like your money is flying here, there, and everywhere
Mhm.
when you're at the beginning. Like there are so many founders that I have spoken to where they've been like, yeah, there were months where I didn't know if I could pay my rent. Or there were months where I didn't know if this bill could be covered. Or it was like, yeah, my car broke down. And I was like, crap, I don't have to go and take it to the garage. So if you're in that stage, it's normal. No one talks about it. Also, because money is a very personal thing. People don't really talk about money unless they're in the safety and comfort of being around friends and family. But I feel like there's a thing of showing the struggle once the struggle has passed.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just normal. People want to protect themselves whilst they're going through it. Like nobody also don't want to put themselves in a situation where it's like, oh, somebody could try and exploit the fact that I'm in this situation and undercut me. There are people in the world who will do that nonsense. So
Mhm.
it makes sense for self-preservation that people don't really talk about it. But I just want to emphasize the fact that it is so normal.
It's
It
yeah.
is something that all people who are building, unless you're in a position where you've got family you can rely on, you've inherited something, or you had a job where you were able to save quite a lot before you took the leap. And even those who have done that, I've seen stories of founders who are like, yeah, I saved up like, 50K and that burned out in X amount of time and I had nothing left. It happens. It's okay to struggle with money when you're building. It's part of the process. When you don't have, it makes you more creative in finding something, in
Oh,
finding the
yeah.
money. So, don't
Like they
because
say, rent is due. Rent
yeah.
is due.
Yeah, the landlords or mortgages aren't going anywhere. That Virgin Media internet bill is still gonna come every month. That car insurance is gonna come once a year. The home insurance is gonna come once a year.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be like, I don't know where this is gonna come from this month because everybody has those moments. It's about getting yourself
Mhm.
to a position where that doesn't happen. But
No,
it is a rarity for people to not go through that.
I remember when I first started out my business as an ocean consultant, my first year, I had a side hustle as a
Mhm.
podcast assistant for
Oh,
Techish podcast, which is basically how I learned all the things that I need to know to do this podcast. So shout out
love
Techish
that.
crew. So I was doing that on the side, and then I was also plate waiting. This is
Of
quite
course.
an underrated income source that not many people know about. So all these like fancy weddings and big events and stuff, the waiting stuff, because it's something. Yeah, I was doing
Oh.
that on weekends and evenings when I wasn't like doing anything. So I was like, I may as well go earn some money. And I actually just genuinely enjoy hospitality. So that's what I was doing for money as well. Only I think last year I finally donated my like plate rating like uniform to charity as like a symbolic like we don't need to do
Oh,
this
I love that. It's like when people hear stories like that, it makes such a difference because building a business is hard. It doesn't matter whether you're building an agency of one or five
again.
or a tech company or creating a product or a service. It's not easy and it's not meant to be, which is why so few people do it. But I
Mhm.
think it's important that people know that is normal before they step into it because I've seen
Mhm.
people be like, oh, I didn't think it'd be this hard for this long. Yeah, it is this hard for this long, and that's just part of the game. I don't even know what the statistic is for how many businesses fail. I don't think the failure rate is due to the business itself being a complete failure and a disaster as just
Mm.
working. I think a lot of it is like saying, I cannot or do not want to put myself in this position for
Yeah.
any longer versus
Mhm.
the actual business itself not working. The business could work, but what you would have to do to make it work, you've got to ask yourself that question. Am I prepared to go through that?
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think I don't know about you, but there's always a slight part of me where it's like, maybe I'll get a job. Like if someone wants to come along and give me a six-figure salary to
Honestly,
really, really
don't,
sick position of something where I believe in it, like, hey, I'll do it.
yeah, honestly, those days where you have those conversations, I don't even have those conversations in my head anymore. My husband just hears it and he's like, oh, this again. Okay, we're gonna wait. But the things that I now love that I wouldn't want to give up is like the freedom,
Oh my
like
gosh.
of having control. I say control, reasonable amount of control over my time. I can decide when I start, when I stop. I can decide, okay, I'm going to do my training session. I need to be there
Yeah.
for 6 o'clock. I'll finish at 8 and then I'll come back and I've got a couple of phone calls with people in America because of the time difference.
Mhm.
I think that's the most difficult thing to give up
Mhm.
when people
Yeah.
make that decision. But also, practically, some people need to because it's like they've got a family, they've got a mortgage. Actually, it's more practical for them to even be a fractional this or a fractional that
Exactly.
3 days a week until they feel like they're steady enough to channel energy into the business again. Like, I get it. And I've had those conversations with myself many a time. It's
It's
normal.
like
I feel like if there's something for people to take from this conversation, any fear that you have, any worry that you have, any concern that you have, anytime you want to sit down and cry your eyes out, it's normal.
literally so normal to flip flop between like full-time, part-time, like self-employed, full-time employed, part-time self-employed, full-time 9 to 5, part-time 9 to 5. It just depends on where life takes you at that moment, and it's
Yeah.
like completely fine.
I think it's also about being very intentional about the life that you want to live. So,
Yeah.
training has been a huge part of my life since I was like a teenager. So, when I started working, Like my non-negotiable was that I will not stop training. So until the time that I started working on Main Hookup, I'd never worked full time. Every job that I've ever had has been part time up until
Mm.
the point that I worked for myself and got to a point that I ended up being like head of marketing for a tech company, for a tech startup, and part time. And my first tech company, I worked my way up pretty quickly. Like I got promoted almost every year in the 4 years that I was there.
Mhm.
And I think I
Yeah.
was working like 25 hours a week at that job, I think, 25 to 30, something like that. It's just that not many people do it. That also means that you have to think about, okay, how much money can you make? Like, what's the kind of lifestyle that you want to live? But I believe in taking the end result and reverse engineering it.
Yeah.
So I want to live a life where I want to have a certain amount of freedom. I want to one day be able to invest in other people. I don't know if somebody needs me on the other side of the world. I want to be able to get up and go there and be there
Yeah.
for them. That all ultimately leads to me working for myself.
Yeah.
That means at some point, probably I'm having multiple sources of income that will allow me to do those things. So it's like, okay, so what are the steps I have to take to get to that point? So I
Mhm.
do think that when you make decisions with the intention of thinking of the end result, you can get there faster.
Yeah.
Um, and
It's
like when I first wanted to start building Main Hookup, I made the decision to work at startups for a few years so I could figure out what it looked like on the inside. That was an
Mhm.
intentional decision. And then I spent 4 or 5 years working at different startups.
Here you are now.
Yeah. Yeah. we I say that, but like I said, sometimes it feels like you can do a lot and still feel like there's so much to do.
Love that. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. I like to wrap up this section or always include in this section this question. What did you want to be when you grew up as a kid? I'm always just curious.
Oh my gosh, I wanted to be a vet.
Oh,
I love animals. Love them, love them, love them. Had a pet rabbit when I was
interesting.
younger. Wanted to be a vet. And then I was like, you don't like squeamish things. This ain't going to work. So I quickly realized, okay, you can be the person that owns animals, but you can't be the one that saves them
Fair
because
enough.
yeah, you don't like it's kind of like when you go through a biology session and it's like you get to the point where they give you things and
Uh,
I mean, I don't know if they
bit
do this
rough.
anymore, but you're cutting open like a heart or a liver and you're dissecting things. And I was like, I would rather not.
Yeah. You know
But
what?
this
And
is
that's fair
basically
enough.
what being a vet is. You're operating on day every day. So I was like, you know what? Let me make a different career choice and love animals in my presence.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You know, and some that maybe like a 60-40 success rate now. I would say like 60% of the time there is like a relation to what you are doing now. But and then the other 40% of the time, like this, I'm like, yeah, that's completely different. Fair enough. Amazing. Now, let's dive more into things that make your life easier. I like to start off this section with something a little bit lighthearted. Like, do you have a walk up song or a song that gets you hyped? I'm currently building a Spotify
Oh,
playlist.
okay. It varies, depends on what I'm doing
Oh,
at the
because you train
moment.
as well.
I need to actually no, that's a lie. There will be people out there who will appreciate this, but there's this guy that I follow on Instagram and I think he's called I Hear Canvas. And he basically does these mixes of different songs. So he will take like two old school Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Naruto. So for those that know
Okay.
anime, oh, it's like the best thing. And I was just
Oh,
like, thank you for bringing two parts of my childhood back to me in like the best way ever. So I love things like that where it's like, it's not even necessarily a song, but people have done like mixes of things. Love that.
yeah.
I will send you the link so that people can listen to it. They're either going to love it or they're going to hate it, but it's like the best thing. It's like the best hype song.
Amazing. Love it. Thank you. And then now a personal policy that keeps you sane. throughout the day?
Oh, a personal policy. If it's gonna derail me, walk away.
Fair
That's a
enough.
personal policy. And when I say derail me, it's like if somebody's starting a conversation and you're like, I sense this could turn into an unnecessary argument because people aren't listening to each other, or there's too many emotions flying high,
Yeah.
or I sense this is going to be a waste of my time and I'm going to get really frustrated. I'm just like, I'm just going to park this and we can come back to it later because I don't have time to be going down this rabbit hole with you today.
Yeah.
And I've
I
learned to say that to people. It's like, yeah, I sense this is about to like throw me in a space that I don't have the time or energy to be in. So we can come back to it. I'm not going to ignore you, but I'm just not dealing with it today.
Yeah.
FYI.
No, I hear it. A question I like to ask in those situations as well now, it's just like, what do you want to get out of this conversation? So we can, like, get to that because we're going around in circles and I don't have the time.
I think it's a mix of that, but then also what I've realized I am quite I would say maybe about 5, 6 years ago, I was always very softly, softly, gently, gently with people.
Mhm.
Um, what I've realized is as time has become thinner, as it's like not really been I consider myself a time poor person right now. As I've become
Mhm.
time poor because there's so many things to do, I've definitely become a bit more
Yeah,
blunt. And like I'm like it's not that I don't care about your feelings, it's just that there's not a lot of time for me to deliver this in the soft and cushy way. So here's the answer to the question, or here's the opinion
yeah,
that you asked for. And that definitely does lead to like a bit more friction. But I'm like, I'm saying the same things. I'm just being a bit more direct about it. That doesn't
literally.
always land well. And that can sometimes take you down rabbit holes, and I just choose not to go down them.
And now something unmissable in your daily routine.
Oh, unmissable.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna lie, a nap or a walk. One of those
Ooh,
2 things. I believe in
okay.
power naps, they can genuinely energize me. Some people can't nap because they're like, "If I put my head down, I'm gonna have a full-blown sleep." So nap
Yeah,
and not wake
nice.
up, like, 5 hours later and have missed half the day. So I find taking a nap really helps, and also just going outside, being outside in nature, like going for a walk through a park, I find really helps me to clear my head. And if
Mm,
there's been something that's been bothering me or something that I haven't been able to figure out, then just like half an hour, 45-minute walk can really give me the headspace to be like, oh, here's a way that we can do that, or another way we could do this, or a way we can work around this problem. So for me, those are the 2 things that really keep me grounded in the day.
and then when it comes to style, do you have any items that are, like, part of your uniform now?
I am a woman of comfort. Trainers
Okay.
are my go-to, and specifically running trainers, because fashion trainers are not that comfortable all the time. I say this,
Yeah.
I worked at Nike, God, they would kill me. Nike
Oh,
for
is it actually Nike? I actually
yeah,
didn't
because
know
named after the Greek goddess of victory.
that, yeah.
So I worked for them for about 3-ish years, and literally walked around in trainers on the shop floor. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this has changed my life. I must now walk around in running trainers because they are so much more comfortable than anything else." Because usually I just like wear them, train in them, throw something else on. But I was like, had to be on my feet for 5, 6 hours in a shop. And I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So I opt for running trainers.
Okay.
The only time you'll ever see me in heels is if it is a special occasion.
Yeah, I hear that. And then when it comes to, like, your beauty regimes, 'cause obviously you do work in the beauty industry, one thing for your skin, so face,
Mm.
potentially one thing for your body, and one thing for your hair that you can't live without. It could be a product or a routine.
So, face wise, one of my friends introduced me to a company called Beauty Pie. I'm not sure if people don't know of them, look them up. They're great, but you can get really high quality skin products for not stupid amounts of money, basically. So, it's like tends to be good ingredients that are kind of like happy and healthy for your skin. I can't even remember the name of their face wash, but it is like the best face wash that I have ever used.
Interesting.
And I'm going to find it. so I can give you guys the name of it. But it's like quite a simple one. So it's not one of the things that I believe with our skin is that we don't need 500 things.
Yeah.
It's called Super Healthy Skin Face Wash.
Nice.
And it comes in jumbo size, and that jumbo size lasts me about 6 months. And
Whoa.
that's like twice a day. So that's morning and evening. I'll wash my face with it. And I use like a decent amount. I might push the pump like 2, 3 times. So it's
Yeah.
like a really, and it costs, I think, like £17 on their website.
That's like what? Oh, less than £3 a month,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Honestly, I bought two of them the other day. I was like, great, I've got a year's supply.
Incredible. I
So
feel like
that
that's probably a good
it's like,
business skill for yourself as well. It's like, just get me that because I will use it.
yes, it's also, they do a membership scheme. So you basically pay for your
Mm.
membership and then you get loads of discounted offers on their items. And I think the membership is something like £50 a year or £100 a year. It's not
Oh,
super
wow.
expensive, but I think it's probably one of the few subscriptions that I would never cancel
Oh,
if I could help
okay.
it. So I really, really like their stuff. That one face wash I would not replace. So that is skin. Body, aloe vera oil,
Ooh,
because I have like sensitive skin. I do have like a couple of skin allergies, so I need to be quite careful what I use. And it is an oil that it moisturizes my skin for ages and ages and ages, and no irritation. So for that,
interesting.
you can usually get that from like any black hair shop. You can find it somewhere.
I never thought about aloe vera and oil, so you've exposed me to something today. I'm like, "Ooh, okay, let me think about that."
I love it. That's one
Mhm.
of my favorites. And then hair, she did and Parish both their shampoo and their leave-in conditioner. So a bit biased here because I know the founder, Jessica, but she's
Yeah.
created like a really amazing range of hair products that for essentially for like curls, coils, like kind of
Mhm.
all textures actually, but really good for curly and coily hair. And again, like one of the best shampoos, one of the best conditioners I've used. There are a couple of other hair products that I use as well, but some of them, if something better came along, I would replace you, whereas
Yeah.
those two, I wouldn't replace them.
How do you spell it for people
She
interested?
did so Shedid,
Mhm.
the and sign, and Parish, I believe, is Parish. But let me double check. Yes, it's double R
Okay.
in Parish.
Then now leaning back into, like, the businessy side of things. Let's go with anything that you consume that helps you become a better business person, apart from your podcast and your newsletter, but
Oh, you know what the best thing is? Get a mentor. Like, content is great. Don't get me wrong. I believe that it can really inspire people, but you're getting probably like 10% of someone's knowledge through a newsletter or through a blog versus actually speaking to somebody who's been there, done it, worn the t-shirt.
yeah.
So I would say I read less now and I speak to people more.
Ooh.
But a
Love that.
newsletter that I will always, always be subscribed to, and I'll probably never cancel a subscription, is Lenny's newsletter.
Yeah. What is that again? I always see it advertised, but I've never actually subscribed to
So the guy
it.
that writes it, I think he was an ex product manager or head of product at Airbnb. And he's just spent years writing this really useful newsletter and also having other people do guest posts who are just like global leaders in the product space.
Nice.
He also has a podcast now. So it started off as a newsletter and then he's branched off and done other things. So he's got a newsletter, he's got a podcast. I think he also has a book that has the best performing newsletters in the book. You can buy that
Nice.
because it's always useful. Um,
Mm.
and it's like, but heavy obviously on the product side. I think if you're keen to sharpen up like your product and marketing skills, I would say that's a very good shout. And the free subscription gets you a lot of good content too. So he does a mix of free newsletters and paid ones, and the free ones are very good.
Cool. And then is there anything that you're consuming for fun?
It's a mix of fun and because it's good for me, but I'm a bit of a health freak, so I do enjoy these things that other people may not enjoy. But I am doing a 90-day yoga plan. I found this guy, or rather, Instagram showed me this guy who's like a bit of a yoga expert. And he has a YouTube series where you can just do one of his classes a day. And it's like 20, 25 minutes of yoga. I find it very calming, especially when you know you're going to have a busy or a hectic day or a hectic week. It's like 20 minutes in the morning where I'm just like stretching. And don't get me wrong, it's hard, especially if you're, I would say my flexibility is somewhere in the middle. I'm not hyper flexible. I'm not like stiff like a board either. So if you know flexibility is something that isn't like your strength, I'd say it's really good to do.
Mm.
Kind of challenges me, but it shouts me out. I cannot remember. No, his name is DJ something. I will find him and send you the link so that you can add it in the newsletter if you do that. But, DJ Kim. So if you
Okay.
find him on Instagram, DJ Kim Yoga.
Cool. And then last thing, what are some tech tools slash apps?
So I currently can't operate without Reclaim. So it's basically like Calendly, but better. I like Calendly, but it is better. So it does a bunch of things. So it has like, you can have different calendar links. So I'll have one for like meetings with people. I have another one that's for my podcast, but it's all connected to the same account, but it's just like different scheduling links. You can sync multiple calendars. So I can sync my work calendar and my personal calendar
Mhm.
so that nothing goes and that there's no clashes. And you can also have things like tasks, habits, and smart one to
Oh, that's
ones.
interesting.
So, habits are like things that you want to make sure you make time for every week or every month. Okay, so one of my habits is I need to spend an hour and a half writing an investor update email once, it was once a month, now once a quarter. So it'll schedule that in your calendar, sure that that's in that time is blocked in your calendar, so people can't book meetings and that's the time for you to do it. I want to go for a walk every day, so I've put that into Reclaim. It puts a walk in my calendar and it will move it around. So if it's scheduled my walk for 11 o'clock, but I have to have a meeting, then it will just move my walk to like 2 o'clock.
I'm currently doing that like manually in my Google
Ah,
Calendar. I'm just going to leave that there. But I don't know. Maybe, I think I do. Part of me does like doing it manually.
there's nothing wrong with that. You could,
Oh, that's so interesting.
so yeah,
So,
and you can also set out different times of day. So you can say my meeting time is between
mhm.
10 and 5, and then my personal time, I don't want anything to happen in my personal time. So it does all of that for you. So I love Reclaim. Cost if you're using it alone is $10 a month, and it's one of the best things that you'll ever use.
It's cheaper than an assistant. So,
Exactly. And it does half the half the things that you would want them to do. Reclaim, and also if you're like me and you know a lot of people, but you're not very good at staying on top of relationships,
yeah.
then a tool called Dex. So that's like a relationship management tool. So like you have CRMs. This is like for people that you're close to, not like your customers or even people
Yeah.
you're working. So it'll import everybody from like your LinkedIn, your phone contacts, your WhatsApp, all of that. And then you can say, how regularly do I keep in touch with this person? Every 3 months, every 6 months, once a year. And then you just shoot them off. And then it reminds you to message them and stay in contact with them.
Yeah, I
So,
built something similar in Notion actually, but yeah, that is definitely a very viable app idea.
yeah, no, honestly, I think it's $100 a year. They do an annual subscription. It's not
Mm.
monthly like Reclaim, but that's what the equivalent of $8 a month, and it is
Yeah,
again money well spent.
amazing.
So those are the two tools that will forever be in my toolkit.
Love that. And then to wrap this section, I feel like you can tell a lot about a person based on the ads they're getting right now. So what are the ads that you're getting right
Oh, I don't watch a ton of things on YouTube, so I'm not getting video ads like that. What's the last ad that I remember? I got a HubSpot ad thrown at me on Instagram the other day. I was like, I don't do business stuff on here. Why is this here? Albeit HubSpot is like everywhere. I also keep getting these ads for this. And actually, the funny thing is, I was just thinking of it and it's literally just appeared. So it's for this tool, when they're doing content creation and they have like a magnetic thing that sticks their phone up
Oh
on.
yeah. Oh,
I
is it the
can't,
suction one?
it's called Kine. That's the one that keeps getting thrown at me. But they're all the same thing, just with different brand names. So I have been doing more content, more video content for like the past 6 months. So that's to be expected. Not many ads. Oh, also clothes ads. So I get a lot of ads from Cider. That is like
Um,
the clothes company that magically appears in my feed. I've never bought anything from them, but they are always in my feed.
so, all right. So now we're going to learn about where you like to go in London. I like to
Yes.
keep this quite quick fire. Is there anything on your London bucket list at
Bucket list. Ugh.
the moment?
It's probably a ton of restaurants. I cannot remember the name of it, but there is a Michelin star Nigerian restaurant somewhere in London. I need to go there.
Is it the one in Brixton?
I can't remember where it is. I just know this is really bad because I should know the name because I know that I want to go there. But I haven't ever been to a Michelin star restaurant before. And if I'm going to
Mm.
go to one for the first time, I want it to be a black owned one.
Solid.
That's on my bucket list.
Solid. And then also, where are you based in London?
Oh, I'm in, so like next door to Wimbledon.
Oh, okay. So Southwest.
Yeah, southwest.
Cool. And so, locally or otherwise, what are your favorite food spots to go to?
Favorite food spots. Okay, this is hard because I love food, but Thai place, Giggling Squid. There's a few of them. There's one in
Oh,
Kingston. There's one in Wimbledon. There's probably a few others, but those are the two I've been to. Steak place. Oh balls, what's it called? Oh, my brain is doing a blank. We'll come back to that one. But cake, Hummingbird Bakery, best
oh,
cupcakes, best red velvet
interesting.
cake you'll ever have. Buenos Aires is the steak place. Again,
Okay.
one in Richmond, one in Wimbledon. Literally the best steak you will have.
And then coffee slash co-working spots.
Oh, okay. I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm a
Fair
hot
enough.
chocolate. Yeah, I have a sweet tooth. Coffee is a bit too bitter for me. But I went to the WeWork in Waterloo. A friend of mine basically has a membership there, and I wasn't really a fan of WeWorks until I went to this one. Oh, it's the best place because there's
Interesting.
so many. Like, it's a mix of places to sit and do your work that are very casual and chilled, but then also places to like go and do deep work where you're not going to be distracted by other people. So it was quite a nice space. There is another one, Arc Club.
Oh,
So they've got a couple of those. They've got one in Earlsfield, one in, I can't remember, there's like four or so locations, but I've been to the one in Earlsfield. That's really nice. But again, it's a mix of like formal and informal. All of the staff are super lovely. You basically have everything that you need. So, and they're not ridiculously expensive from memory. It's like 150 or something like that a month.
yeah. Sounds about right.
Because I know some of them are like ridiculously expensive. So that I think is pretty reasonable.
And then what are your favorite places to go out, whatever that means to you? So whether that's the club or like an activity with your friends.
Um, I kind of just love going for walks. So if I'm going through a
Yeah.
park, any nice big park that I can go for a nice walk in, I am down for that.
Nice.
So I do like a good walk. And
Mm.
I'm not a huge like bar person, so I'm not like a night out on the town girl. I am very much a stay at home. My favorite places are actually the homes of my friends. If
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, like if somebody's like, "Come round and we can make food together," I'm there.
Sign me up. Alright. And so London is the city of networking. Are there any like networking clubs or business groups that you're part of that you attend regularly?
I would say there's a ton of WhatsApp groups that I'm in, and I have been exposed to a lot of different events. So one of them, and this is for more so for like diverse folks, so people that come from underrepresented groups. There's Diversity X. which is a great group to be a part of. There is Blocks to Bags.
Oh
So I
yeah.
actually went to one of their events, I think it was last year, but they had a really great event and they've got a pretty active WhatsApp group as well.
Hmm.
And then a community that is for everybody, especially people that are freelancing, work for themselves, have a bit of a mixed career, is the Portfolio Collective. So TPC, they have a mix of an online community through their platform, and they did their first like really, really, really big event this year, the Portfolio Festival, which was amazing. So I'm looking forward to taking like going to more of those. So I definitely check those three out.
Thank you for giving us a little rundown, your like personal guide to London. We're gonna wrap things up with a few questions.
Yeah.
And the first question that I like to ask you is, when was the last time you were proud of yourself? And when was the last time you were proud of someone like on the timeline or anyone in your kind of like network who
Oh,
did something really cool?
I would say last time I was proud of myself was a couple of weeks ago when I did the TED Ideas talk. That
Yeah.
was for a lot of reasons. One, because TED has been on my vision board for a couple of years, and I was like, oh yeah, like 3, 4 years time, that'll be fine. And then it happened this year, and I was not really expecting it. But also because it was a really fast process. So from the moment we got selected to the moment of the talk, it was like 3, 4 weeks. And that was like
Wow.
writing, scripting, memorizing, but you kind of memorize to an extent. Um,
Yeah.
and learning how to deliver something like that in 4 weeks. I was like, oh, that's a lot. Um,
Hmm.
so I was proud to just being in a position to do it and being able to make the most of that opportunity.
Hmm.
And the last time I was really proud of someone else, I would say one of my best friends. If she listens to this, she'll laugh, but she'll also squeal because and it's not even so much a moment, but I just feel that Asha, of all of my friends in the past few years, has like, when it's like, oh, we need to be more grown up, and she's like become more grown up very quickly than anybody else. I'm like, oh yeah. Like you just see somebody not completely changed. She's still who she is. But when you see people really kind of stepping into themselves, it's a really nice thing to see.
Then to close out, is there anything that you would like to personally plug and or need help with? I always go by you never know who's listening. So
Yeah,
shoot
no,
your shot.
no, that's true. I guess, I mean, you guys have heard about Made Hookup now. So for me, it's if it's something that you think is interesting, message me for whatever reason, whether it's interesting, like partnership wise, customer wise, stylist wise, or you just ask questions about building a business, feel free to message me. You'll find me on LinkedIn under my name, Jade Buffong. There's not many Buffongs on there, I promise you. So you'll find me on LinkedIn, or like somewhere like Instagram, but message me there. And what do I need help with? You know what? I need help with partnerships. This is the year where I'm going to be leaning into partnerships and trying to speak to bigger brands about helping us do some really interesting things. Like we're going to run a day where we help vulnerable children get access to free hair care, free hair education, and free hair products. And what I really want to do is like collaborate with brands, have them sponsor us so that we have the money to really support as many children as we can. If there's anybody who knows their partnerships inside out, or anybody that works for brands that are interested in that thing, interested in social and community causes, again, would love them to hit me up because, yeah, I want this to basically be something that we do every year in some way, shape, or form. We support people and give them access, especially vulnerable people and vulnerable children, and give them access to free hair care. So, this is going to be a pilot thing that we go on and we do each year.
Amazing. I wonder if that's something you could apply for. I actually don't know how it works, but like lottery funding, I feel like that's something I would see. Like, oh, like funded by the National Lottery. They would always do like community partnerships and with stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I think there's like I've started speaking to local councils. It feels like there's Possibly money there. It's just anything council related is not quick, but that's to be expected.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I am going to put all of your recommendations inside your
Amazing.
personal profile page inside the Coffee and Oysters guide so people can go and explore that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Coffee and Oysters. As always, all of the guest recommendations will be in the guide. To never miss an episode, sign up on Substack or follow along on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and keep those 5-star ratings coming. And don't let me scream into a void. You can get involved directly at coffeeandoysters@gmail.com or chime in on TikTok, Instagram at Coffee and Oysters Pod. All the details in the show notes. Thanks and see you next time.